citizens a perfect equality of rights. Those words were uttered by Thomas Jefferson over 200 years ago. Let's be clear about this, folks. We're not talking about homosexuality as a sin. We're not talking about lifestyle choices or innate characteristics. We are talking about a non-discrimination ordinance that the city of Ogden has a chance to pass tomorrow night. An ordinance that will provide an equality of rights and a protection for all of Ogden citizens, regardless of religion, regardless of race, regardless of creed, regardless of color, and regardless of gender orientation and identity. Now, that doesn't say if you are gay or lesbian, you get special protections. What that says is that you cannot be fired or discriminated against in your workplace on the basis of a gender orientation or identity. Guess what? You all have one. It applies to everyone equally. Everyone in this room has some form of gender identity and gender orientation. And that's what the ordinance reads. The ordinance reads that if you have 15 or more employees, you can't refuse to hire someone or fire them or demote them or refuse to promote them on the basis of that gender orientation. It doesn't say that you can't fire somebody who comes into the office boasting about his sexual context. Nowhere in the ordinance does it say that. It would be fairly easy to allow this discussion to wander far afield. We can wander into all of the misunderstandings. We can wander into the religious ramifications of this. We can talk about whether or not, what was the term, God hates fags? But it doesn't cover the point that we're here to discuss tonight, folks. What we're here to talk about is basic civil liberties and basic protections that apply to all of our citizens equally. I see a lot of folks walking around with First Amendment buttons on. Bravo. I'm a big fan of the First Amendment. Without it, we wouldn't be here. But that has to apply to everyone equally, or it means absolutely nothing. That's what we're here tonight to discuss. By the end of this discussion, it is my sincere hope that you take away two things. Number one, an understanding of what these ordinances really mean, not cluttered by misunderstanding, not cluttered by fear. And number two, the knowledge that people who have dramatically different views and different perspectives can come together and have a discussion in a civil forum without it devolving into nonsense, the kind of nonsense that we see on the television pretty much nightly. So, to start with, it is important to understand exactly what is being proposed in these ordinances. And I'm going to read this one because I didn't have time to memorize it and I don't want to goof it up. This chapter does not create a private cause of action, nor does it create any right or remedy that is the same or substantially equivalent to the remedies provided under federal or state law. This chapter does not create a protected group of persons or any special rights or privileges which would not be available to all the city's citizens because every person has a sexual orientation and a gender identity. Nothing in this chapter shall be interpreted to require any person to grant preferential treatment to any person based upon sexual orientation or gender identity. Straight from the ordinance, folks. Straight from the ordinance. We're not talking about creating a separate class of citizens here that have more protections than anyone else. What we're talking about is ensuring that the protections that exist under law apply equally to everyone. To provide an equality of rights, as Jefferson put it. And that's the basis of the society that we've created over the past 200 years. It's also important to note that the ordinances only apply to businesses with more than 15 people, and on the housing side, only to folks that are renting 4 or more properties. We're talking about corporations, professionals. It doesn't apply if you have some kind of objection to the homosexual lifestyle and you have a duplex and you let somebody rent it. It doesn't apply to you, folks. The fear, the garbage that's been stirred up, it's irrelevant and it's not true. Pay attention to what is actually in the ordinance. The point, again, is to ensure that everyone is protected equally. Now, Dave, I want to say Pastor Mallinak, some innate, some respect issue there, I guess. wants to say that these ordinances create a situation that shifts the playing field away from level. So we have, I think it's easy to say that we have an unlevel playing field right now. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. The idea with the ordinance is to shift it to a level playing field. Now Dave will tell us that that playing field with these ordinances tilts the level in the opposite direction and makes it unfair for everyone else, especially Christians who have a moral objection to homosexuality. It's just not true. Pick up the ordinance and read it for yourself. What it does is tell you that the playing field for everyone has to be equal. Every single one of you have a gender identity. Every single one of you have an orientation. And what this tells you is that your employer cannot hold you responsible for that in the workplace. What an employer should judge in the workplace is the product of your work. Whether or not you show up on time, whether or not you adhere to company policy, not who you go home at night to. It's none of their business. Another common misunderstanding is that these ordinances will open the door to spurious harassment claims. If, as Dave indicated, someone says to an employer, "I'm gay," that employer then says, "Cast out the evil son, repent, and come unto the light." Well, at the point where the employee says to that person, "Excuse me, sir, that's harassment," when it becomes unwelcome, that person does not have the right to continue that conversation in the workplace. But let me tell you something, folks. That's not in this ordinance. That's in the Utah State Code, that's in federal law, and that already exists. There is nothing in this ordinance that gives an employee or a prospective tenant the right to file a charge against an employer or a landlord unless they take a specific action based upon a person's gender identity or orientation. That person has to say, "I'm not going to rent to you because you're gay," or in some way make that decision, or "I'm not going to hire this person because you're gay." The harassment piece, the discussions in the workplace, whether or not good Christians can come to that employee or to that person and bear witness to the evil of their ways, is completely irrelevant in the context of these ordinances. It's just not there. I'm going to read Utah's code for you. Code R477-15-2 defines what workplace harassment is. Conduct in violation of R47-15-1 that is unwelcome, pervasive, demeaning, ridiculing, derisive, or coercive, and results in a hostile, offensive, or intimidating work environment. That's Utah's code, folks. That's not in these ordinances. There's nothing in here that tells you that you cannot talk to somebody about their orientation or about their gender identity. Nothing. These ordinances do not prohibit people from engaging in discussions regarding religion or sexuality in the workplace, pursuant to company policies. Again, you get back into the harassment and offensive work environment stuff under harassment code if you engage in too many explicit conversations in the workplace. But it's not part of what we're discussing here tonight. There is no mandate, either implied or direct, that stipulates that there be preferential treatment, that there be grounds for frivolous or spurious lawsuits, for anything other than someone being denied the right to work or to live as an equal part of the society. Our nation was founded on certain basic principles. First and foremost, that we are a nation that values liberty. Liberty means equality for everyone. If we do not have equality, we cannot have liberty. If the government or any government entity can strip the rights of any group of people away, they can strip those same rights from any of you. As we continue this discussion, I'm going to ask each of you to stop and consider the rights that you enjoy as American citizens. the right to believe as you will, to worship as you will, and to live your life according to those rights, to speak out in a free sense, to assemble, to petition the government for redress of grievances, to keep and bear arms. All of these rights delineated in the Constitution and the amendments. But if any one of these rights can be taken from any one group of people, then all of these rights can be taken from all of us. And that's what we're here to discuss tonight.